In the news tonight, President, the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason to represent Barbados at Queen Elizabeth II's funeral. A glut of amberfish has driven the price down. Barbados could be home to a geothermal plant in the near future. And in sports, Barbados in a tough battle with Ireland for Davis Cup honours.
Broadcasting from our studios in the Pine St. Michael, this is CBC NewsNight, starting now.
Very good evening to you. I'm Lisa Broom with the CBC NewsNight. In our top story, President, Her Excellency, the Most Honorable Dame Sandra Mason will be among world leaders attending the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II on Monday. This was disclosed in a release from government late this evening. The President flew out of Barbados today. In her absence, the Very Reverend Dr. Jeffrey Gibson will perform the functions of the Office of the President. The President is expected back in office on September 23rd. Now, earlier today in London, the queue for the Queen's lying in state was paused because it reached capacity. Despite the closure, mourners still joined the queue. It was officially reopened several hours later, but before the pause, the queue was almost 5 miles long, with people waiting at least 14 hours. After reopening, the wait time was estimated at over 24 hours. Now, the Queen will lie in state through Sunday before her funeral service on Monday morning. Well, a dramatic drop in the price of amberfish has vendors and consumers smiling. The glut is expected to drive increased sales for fishermen and vendors. Wendy Burke tells us it was so plentiful today at the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex that some fishermen were not just wholesalers, but retailers as well.
Fish, fish, fish has been the line on repeat all day at the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex as both fishermen and vendors anxiously await lots of customers to take the abundance of amberfish off their hands. This glut situation, according to Patricia Mapp of Stall 7, has been happening off and on since the ice machine went down a few weeks ago.
Plenty amberfish started to come, and the prices dropped because of that. It weren't the ice, so the fishermen couldn't afford to keep them on the boat, so you had to get rid of them. So at the moment now, more boats gone up there now, tide change, and it's a lot of amber out there.
Fisherman Austin Buntasmall performed the role of vendor today because after he supplied several vendors, he still had tons of fish.
We got enough amberfish down here because the hawkers and everybody then buy up and everybody full, everybody got enough amberfish. So we got to come outside and sell ourselves there. Usually we don't do that, but there's enough amberfish, so you got to come outside and hustle if you want to get something out of it. So that's what's going on right now. $4 a pound to anybody that want to get some.
One customer who did not give her name said her mother told her about the amberfish. And when she heard the price, it was hard to resist.
I heard it on the radio and I said, you know what, let me come and check because I never tried it before. So I said, at least, the price is right. So I said, I'll buy them because I can't afford to buy flying fish, you understand?
Sandra Hines has been selling for over 4 decades, and she was celebrating this abundance while calling on more customers to come.
Over 40, 50 years. And this is really where I raise up in. But today with the amberfish, they are plentiful. And I love to see when they come in like this. They are selling $4 a pound from the boat. Ready, clean and filleted. This one, 5 pounds, $30. And they are plentiful, and we like the customers to come in because they are so delicious.
The ice machine at the market is back up. So those consumers accustomed to the fish or wanting to try amber for the first time still have lots of choice. And best of all, you don't have to scale, gut, or bone as the fish is packaged and ready to go. Wendy Burke, CBC News.
Thanks, Wendy. Well, trade and industry are inextricably linked to innovation. That's how Minister of Industry, Innovation and Smart Technology, Davidson Ishmael, described the work of the winners of the Barbados Industrial Development Corporation, or BIDC's Export Barbados Ocean Innovations Challenge 2022. At the awards ceremony at Bignell's Point Art Gallery, Pelican Village today, the minister said the presentations of DigiFish and the Blue Dot Project and the Skeets Bay Market Market project were the work of thinkers, and the efforts were in keeping with government's plans for the blue economy and the promotion of economic growth.
We are confident that there are significant untapped and even undertapped resources within our waters and related industries that we can explore. As we continue to better define and understand how to leverage these assets, we believe that it is critical to improve how we eat, how we travel, and how we transport our goods. Also, how we mitigate climate change, how we harness our energy, and how we protect our coastlines, among other things.
Elderly lives matter. That's the message from the Barbados Association of Medical Practitioners in light of the number of seniors who've lost their battle to the virus in these latter stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking on the morning report, President Dr. Linda Williams is particularly concerned with back to school around the corner. All schools are expected to resume full face-to-face instruction come Monday, with only the mask-wearing mandate remaining for students when indoors.
I have a case of several elderly patients in the last week, just past week, who have fallen ill as a result of COVID-19. Some have ended up at Harrison's Point. A couple of them have died. Some are at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. Some died at Queen Elizabeth Hospital. And this still is ongoing, okay? Now, it may be a case where 2 kids are home, but they're asymptomatic or very mildly symptomatic. So they are not really, they might have a little diarrhea. They might have some stuffy nose or runny nose and cough and so forth. But in that, they didn't realize that they spread it to their grandparents, and the grandparents are the ones, and the parents who have comorbidities, they're the ones who are bearing the effects.
As a result, the BAMP boss has listed a set of recommendations to help prevent the spread of COVID from students to those most at risk. That list includes more students getting vaccinated. Dr. Williams is concerned the level of vaccination remains too low among children who are now going back into an environment where COVID restrictions have been removed for the most part.
It would have been nice to have seen those 2 things concomitant, the vaccine uptake along with the removal of restrictions. But the removal of restrictions has occurred, and so we have to encourage parents not to send your children to school if they're unwell, to have your children tested, we recommend the vaccination of those children, and we recommend that you give your children sanitizer as well as for them to wear their masks so that they can interact as safely as possible. It really comes down now to being our brother's keeper and to instructing our children wisely as to how to interact, particularly if they take public transport.
And there were 51 new COVID-19 cases reported yesterday from the 323 tests conducted. The cases comprised 10 people under the age of 18 and 41 who are 18 years and older. The number of people in isolation facilities was 37, while 325 were in home isolation. The laboratories conducted 761,396 tests since February 2020 and recorded 102,119 COVID-19 cases. Under the National Vaccination Program for COVID-19, the total number of fully vaccinated people is 154,558, or 57% of the total population, which equates to about 67% of the eligible population. Minister of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs Kirk Humphrey says while Barbados has been successful in reducing mortality levels in the elderly population, it has not done as good a job in reducing morbidity. He told a national consultation drafting an elder care policy there are areas of priority which should be included.
We have people who are living longer, but at the same time they're not living well. And I would have read in totality with great notes the situation analysis that you would have done, which I thought clearly described what it is that we're facing with. But again, I just felt there were some things in here that we should not be coping with now because we should have addressed them before. And while we did not address them before, you plan and you plan and you plan, and then sometimes you just do not follow up. And it is for that reason that I think when we talk about aging, we really need to stop saying age and start saying healthy aging.
Special Advisor on Elder Affairs, Cynthia Ford, who spoke at the consultation, said it's been over 20 years since efforts to devise policies for the elderly started. She said the island's history was one where the extended family look after seniors, but now is a situation where state agencies are the ones who have to do the care. She believes that if organizations and civil society banded together to help the National Assistance Board, it would be better.
Form organizations that will help to strengthen the hands of the National Assistance Board members, as well as BARP and other institutions, the Soroptimists. I'm not going to call the others. It's not my duty to do the feature address, but to say unless we do it in a collaborative way, we cannot achieve the goals that we have. And this policy framework must be properly coordinated.
Meanwhile, the Pan American Health Organization, which is also a part of the consultations, said the elderly contribute in many ways to society. Representative Dr. Solange Kobe Jackson said people are living longer and healthier, but if they age in poor health, it has a negative impact on society.
The World Health Organization have 194 state members who have already called for a decade of healthy aging, with the vision of a world in which all people live longer, healthier lives. Population aging is a worldwide phenomenon which occurs rapidly in Latin American and in Caribbean countries.
Well, the BARP Charitable Trust is hopeful it can resume awarding scholarships to people studying aging and gerontology from next year. That's according to Chair of the Trust, Madam Justice Elnith Kentish. She explains that no scholarships have been awarded for the past 2 years as a result of the impact of COVID-19.
We have so far had 3 persons who have benefited from that program and indeed have master's degrees in that area. Regrettably, with the intervention of the pandemic, that has of course affected all our lives in every dimension possibly. And so we have not been able to award a scholarship for the past 2 years.
Those members of the local bar who have attained the title of Queen's Counsel are free to change their designation to KC, King's Counsel, since last Thursday's passing of Queen Elizabeth II. A well-placed source within the Supreme Court said all those who were given the honor prior to Barbados becoming a republic can take on the name change automatically, as it was an honor they earned. However, going forward, all those within the legal fraternity who rise to these heights will be referred to as Senior Counsel, or SC. Now, CBC has been reliably informed that sometime next week, the Chief Justice is expected to make an official comment on the matter. The Supreme Court of the Organization of Eastern Caribbean States sent correspondence this week that the change to KC should now be used. A former government minister, Dr. Dennis Lowe, has died at the age of 64. CBC understands he had been ailing and passed away in the wee hours of this morning. Dr. Lowe represented the constituency of Christchurch East after successfully contesting the 2008 general election for the Democratic Labour Party. General Secretary of the DLP, Steve Blackett, says he's truly saddened by the passing of his friend and comrade.
He was controversial in some of his mouthings, but that was because his conviction of his philosophical beliefs often unbridled and loosened his tongue to the discomfort of some. But that was who he was. His remarkable oration was informed, practiced, and cultivated by his exposure to the church as a lay preacher. He was evangelical in his parliamentary speeches and his platform presentations and lectures. On behalf of the President, officers, councils, and members of the Democratic Labour Party, I convey our heartfelt condolences to his family and to his friends.
Dr. Lowe served as Minister of Environment, Water Resources and Drainage, and prior to that he held the portfolio of social care, constituency empowerment and urban development. Former DLP Member of Parliament James Paul remembers him as a politician who was sincere in the desire to represent people.
Many people had a lot to say about Dr. Lowe, but if it is one thing that one cannot say about him is that he was not passionate about his constituents. He was not passionate about his beliefs. Also, too, he loved the Democratic Labour Party. And I would say that even after his death, that Dr. Lowe would have wanted better for the Democratic Labour Party. It may be those who might think different, but Dr. Lowe himself represented those stories that we tell about poor people coming from humble origins and going to the heights that he needed to go.
Acting Prime Minister Santia Bradshaw has extended condolences to Dr. Lowe's family and friends on behalf of the government and people of Barbados and the Barbados Labour Party. In a statement, she said Dr. Lowe, who was a clinical psychologist before he served 2 terms in the House of Assembly, was a faithful servant of the Democratic Labour Party and was always one of its most ardent supporters and defenders. The acting Prime Minister said his robust use of colourful language on the political platform endeared him to many and ensured he was always one of the DLP's most sought-after speakers. Ms. Bradshaw added that while the BLP may not have often agreed with his political style or the policies his party pursued, they do believe that as a Barbadian, Dr. Lowe cared about his country and see it as appropriate to set aside the cut and thrust of politics to thank him for his service. Dr. Lowe leaves to mourn his 2 sons, Miles and JD, his father, Lemuel Green, and several siblings. And the Calypso fraternity has lost one of its popular backup singers. Tracy Trotman of the Cat Attack Girls was also a former staffer here at the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation in the multi-choice department. Tracy, who shot to fame with Observer's song Cat Attack, was a member of the popular backup trio known as the Cat Attack Girls. Her family members said she fell ill and passed away today. Tracy Trotman, who was administrative assistant to Andrew Green, the chief MCTV officer, was a customer service representative before her promotion. Mr. Green fondly remembered her today on hearing news of her passing and described her as the epitome of what an excellent employee ought to be. He said she was punctual with an excellent work ethic, always going beyond the call of duty. She leaves to mourn her father and her brother in England and 2 sisters here in Barbados. Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Ryan Strachan, has appealed to the private sector to come on board to help government improve its financial standards and fill the shortage of auditors. He made the call this morning during the virtual public sector conference organized by the Institute of Chartered Accountants.
There seems to be a shortage of auditors. There seems to be. And therefore, we will work with the private sector to determine what is the best approach to be able to man and resource the internal audit department, because we believe that unless we find a way such that we can leverage the expertise that does exist within the private sector, be able to train up people over the course of the next 2 to 3 years to become, to build that capacity within the department and across government. We have to do that.
The much talked about debt for nature swap should be viewed in positive light, as it will not increase Barbados's debt burden. Senior Minister, Senator the Most Honourable Jerome Walcott made the point as he led off the debate in the Upper House on the resolution on Section 4 of the Debt Conversion Counter Guarantee Act. He says not only is it an innovative funding method, but it will allow marine species to replenish and result in savings for the country on some existing interest rates.
I said that the overseas external debt was 6.5%. And on page 4 of the schedule, I see here, when we speak of the Credit Suisse, to be fixed, the current indicative rate approximately 4.15 per annum for the external debt. So you're moving from paying an interest rate on this same amount, from 6.5 to 4.15. Similarly, for the Series E bonds, you're moving from an interest rate, instead of 8%, and the first year being International Bank, the fixed interest rate of 3.25%.
When
You're
on
moving
all
from 8
sides.
to 3.25.
A win-win on all sides. That's how Government Senator Dr. Crystal Haynes sees the debt for nature swap Barbados is pursuing.
We're able to avert a debt crisis while taking action against the climate crisis, while also allowing us to pay early and to return some funds back to our creditors. So they will be quite happy to see them getting at least some of their investment back in a way that will signal to the international community that Barbados is serious about meeting its obligations.
Independent Senator Andrew Malalu supports the legislation, but he's calling for tight controls to be put in place to regulate the money Barbados saves from the swap. It was announced recently that the money will be diverted to the Barbados Environmental and Sustainability Fund, set up to manage government's marine conservation plans. Acknowledging this, Senator Malalu said it is important for the money to be accounted for independently.
Firstly, segregate it so that it cannot be used otherwise, other than for the stated purpose, because, Mr. President, we are obligated to do so. Number two, account for it independently. Let's get a third party involved who can show that what we have done, we have met those obligations. Number three, audit it annually so that we don't have this situation that we see in other places where it's 10, 12, 15 years and we can't get an audit on these matters. They should be audited. Let's start this right from day one. We're doing it now, audit annually. And finally, disclose it transparently.
The Insurance Institute of Barbados has become the first organization to be presented with a Certificate of Program Accreditation from the Barbados Accreditation Council, or BAC. Shortly before handing over the certificate, Executive Director of the Council, Lisa Gale, noted accreditation continues to be an important step within the certification process for education and training institutions and their programs. She added that such organizations have come to realize this level of certification allows them to be recognized as an upper echelon institution. Meantime, Chief Executive Officer of the Insurance Institute, Gina Welch, said the accreditation is a win for the institution, its students, as well as the entire insurance industry and stakeholders. Time for the sports news now. Mark Seal joins us live in studio. Good evening, Mark.
Very good evening, Lisa. Good evening to everyone. We're going to start with the tennis, where Barbados and Ireland are tied 1-1 after day one of their men's Davis Cup World Group 2 tie at the Wilde Tennis Center. On a rain-affected day one, which saw a delay of about 2 hours and 45 minutes, Barbados' top player Darian King had to fight back in the second match to even the contest at 1-1 after Barbados lost the opener. King was carried the distance in the first set by Ireland's number 2, Oscar O'Hossein, who won 7-6 and 9-7 in the tiebreak. And it was relatively easier in the second set, with King winning 6-3 for a 2-sets-to-love victory. All that excitement came after Barbados' number 2 seed, Matthew Foster Estwick, went down to Ireland's number 1, Simon Carr. The match didn't start out well for Foster Estwick, opening up with a double fault. However, he evened the score at 15-all with this powerful serve, and Carr's return set up nicely just to be put away. Foster Estwick recovered from that opening double fault to win that first game, and he was on his way, or so it was hoped. Carr, though, would bounce back immediately, taking the second game with a serve to the local lad's backhand, then followed it up with a cross-court winner, and it was 1-1. The Irishman would go on to get the first break of the match. Foster Estwick with the serve and volley. The first was good, but the follow-up was an unforced error, and Carr went up 2-1. Carr held in game number 4 to solidify the break to go 3-1. And Foster Estwick too will hold his serve next service game. This time the serve and volley worked, with Carr's return going wide. The score is now 3-2 to Carr. There would be no more games for Barbados in that first set, with Carr holding serve thanks to another unforced error from Barbados. Ireland taking the set 6-2. Foster Estwick, as he did in the first set, began the second with a win. Sticking with his serve and volley game, this time Carr's return is allowed to go long, and Barbados up 1-0 in the second. Carr also held serve. Foster Estwick just managing to get the racket to this serve, but it had little on it, so we're all even at 1-1. Just as in the first set, Carr would break Foster Estwick in the second game, this double fault sealing the deja vu for the visitor to go 2-1 up. After the hold by Ireland, Barbados will be broken for a second time in the fifth game. Foster Estwick with the serve, but Carr's return led him to hit the volley into the net. And the Irish now with a huge advantage, 4-1 up. Game, set, and match point. Foster Estwick with the serve, with a clear plan to keep away from Carr's forehand. A steady diet of strokes to Carr's backhand was only halted with another unforced error into the net. So, after just an hour and 16 minutes, with Carr converting 5 of 11 break points and Foster Estwick losing 6 games in a row, he dropped the second set 6-1 and the match 2-0. 6-2, 6-1. And tomorrow will be for all the marbles as King and his doubles partner Hayden Lewis take on Ohosin and Connor Gannon at 10 a.m. Now we are short of at least the first of the reverse singles, and if the score is still tied 2-2 after that, then there will be the final and decisive match. Now those matchups are with Foster Estwick going up against Ohosin, and that juicy matchup of the two number ones, King versus Carr.
At least one external entity is interested in establishing a geothermal plant in Barbados. Word of this from Government Senator Lorenzo Herwood, who says a proposal on the matter is to be submitted to the Barbados National Oil Company shortly.
As soon as the middle of October, the Barbados National Oil Company Limited will be receiving a proposal from an external entity in terms of a geothermal plant that could convert the heat from the earth into hydrogen. And that is just a proposal, not a commitment of the BNOCL or the government. So I just want to put that to rest.
Past president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Barbados, Linda McCollin, believes government needs to ensure there's more accountability at state-owned entities to ensure issues raised in the Auditor General's report are not repeated. Her comments came during the group's virtual public sector conference under the theme Retool, Realign and Refocus. She says there are some processes and examples that could be taken from the private sector.
In the private sector, when a company is audited by an external auditor and issued a management letter, which is really the equivalent of the Auditor General's report, management must respond within a specified period to the issues raised, stating why it occurred, how it will be corrected, and when that correction will be implemented. The management letter with responses is then reviewed and discussed with the audit committee or the board before it is submitted in final form to the auditor for formal issuance. These issues are then monitored on an audit tracker at each audit committee meeting and board meeting, and management is held accountable for issues not resolved within the agreed timelines. Sometimes this accountability could be dismissal, especially in cases where the issues are repeated and remain unresolved.
Cricket analyst and former England cricketer Roland Butcher believes the West Indies selectors did the best job of the hand they were dealt. He was reacting to the Windies 15-man squad announced on Wednesday for the ICC T20 World Cup in Australia to be played in October. Butcher says the batters will have to be at their best in the conditions down under.
This is T20. You know, the power play goes very quickly, and then the remaining overs that you've got left is for the rest of the team. So you haven't got time to say about genuine batsmen. You need players who are going to be aggressive, make good decisions, and score, be positive. So we do not have any batsmen that you would say has been outstanding, that to the point that you cannot leave them out. I mean, if there is, I would like somebody to tell me. I don't know who they are. We've got players who have got to score now and again, but in doing that, it allows other people also to have an opportunity. We need players who are going to make themselves undroppable. So really all the players that were left out cannot say that they had the divine right to be selected, because none of their stats suggested that they could not be left out. It's a harsh reality.
Now, in terms of the bowling department, Butcher says there were a few surprise selections.
Cottrell was a bit of a surprise for me. I thought, obviously, he's been out for a little while. I thought perhaps playing, if they get to Australia, that playing on those faster wickets, they might want to add a little bit more pace to the attack. I was thinking along the line of someone like Jaden Seals, even if he wasn't a starter, to have somebody in the group, with a little bit more pace, and it would also be a good learning experience for him. So I was a bit surprised that Cottrell got the call ahead of Seals, because it just really leaves Alzari Joseph as the only one with genuine pace. You wouldn't say that Jason Hall is a fast bowler. You wouldn't say Obed McCoy is a fast bowler. I think there are players who can do a good job, but sometimes, as you will see, Australia will use their pace men well throughout the tournament.
Well, that's our news for tonight. On behalf of the entire team, thank you so much for joining us. Good night.
Thanks for visiting us. To get more stories like this one, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.